This morning, I love these pictures, by the way. It's really cool what AI can do for us. I wanted to talk about motivation. And when I think about motivation, I think about it in the context of the journey that we're on. How do we get ourselves sometimes to wake up in the morning and take the next step? How do we get ourselves moving towards what is next and where we're going? And so I talked to ChatGPT, who is now integrated with DALL-E, and I said, hey, let's talk about this. And I said, give me some pictures, and they give me some really cool pictures. The only one that bothers me a little bit is that right there. I'm not sure what's going on there, but that's okay. It took it 30 seconds to make these pictures. So I couldn't have done it in 30 seconds myself. So a lot of us in this room are, whether in our businesses, in our community organizations, in our churches, with our schools, are in some position where we're trying to advance something forward. And sometimes we're trying to advance it forward with a team. Now, that doesn't mean that you're the lead of your team, but it could mean that you're leading with your team, because there are multiple ways to lead. Leading from the top, leading from peer to peer, and even leading up when you're trying to change how leadership is moving things forward. So even if you're not like, I don't have a team that I'm leading, this hopefully will apply no matter what. And the second thing about this is, nothing I'm going to say this morning is groundbreaking. It should be encouraging, because if you find something meaningful today, it wasn't because I was storing some secret formula back that only I knew about. What I know is a process. What I know is how to work things out. Currently, I lead a team of 35 at the firm and a team of 6 at the restaurant. And so I have experience with leadership as a teacher, I have experience as leadership as a peer, and I have experience as leadership now in the last 14 years as an employer. And so much of the time, when you're trying to look at motivation, you're trying to look at how you get to where you want to go next, the questions that can lead to a frustrating outcome, because you're leading people, and people are constantly changing. People are constantly shifting. Somebody's life outside your business could take a left turn in a bad way, and they bring that to your business. They bring that to your team engagement. They bring that trash in with them, and you have no ability to control what happens with that. You have no ability to change what's happening. So how do you lead effectively inside of, for me, let's talk about the 8-hour window on a daily basis that people have chosen to give me to join this team. How do you lead effectively, especially when there is so much else life going on outside of that you have no control over, that influences their desire from day to day on how to engage with what you're doing? And so the simple process that I've used over and over and over again is answering some of those most basic questions. So that first one is, what? What do you do? What is it that you're about? What is this thing doing? Mark, so give me one sentence. What does Inkscape do? Print. So if we take Mark's example, and he could definitively expand on that, and we are very well aware that Mark could expand on that. Mark has now very clearly, though, put parameters around what Inkscape is. So, Mark, I need to talk to you about being a lender and lending money and getting mortgages on properties and doing those kinds of things that are going to help other businesses in the community. Because you're working with businesses, you're helping businesses. I think you should get into lending as well. That's not what you do. You could say, maybe it'd be tempting, but that's not what you do. We could say, Mark, we need you to get into building. We need you to build other buildings. We need inks. That's not what you do. But when this is ill-defined, it can get tempting as a business person or as a team leader, as an organizational leader, to start going, oh, what if it's like this? What if I did something else? When the what gets out of focus, your team is going to start to lose focus. That is coming from somebody who is a serial entrepreneur. I have 5 businesses that clearly have each their own agenda and what they do. Now, they happen to feed each other in some way, shape, or form as well in an ecosystem, and that's a larger what. But when it comes to the team at the restaurant, I don't ask them to talk about legal work. That's not what they do. When it comes to the team at the firm, I don't ask them to serve food. I don't even talk about that with them. What is super important to make sure it is well defined. Because if you do not define this, this is the first place where on your journey, the map's going to get a little fuzzy. Because what you do is super important for everybody to understand and stay focused. The next one, again, nothing earth-shaking, how. Now, I'm not going to ask Mark to tell us how he goes about the printing work, because there are multiple ways that this happens for them. I've walked past the big room downstairs, and I've seen inside, and I've seen all the machines. There's probably multiple hows they deliver on their what. But a lot of problems that happen in teams is that the how can start to get locked up in a person. When a how is locked up in a person, everybody who needs an answer how has to go to that person. They have to keep coming to this person. When instead, and I don't have a really great way to write this, but I'm going to just go ahead and put the word. When you take the how and take it out of the person's head and turn it into a process, this no longer locks your team up into trying to deliver on what through a person. They can now deliver it through a process. And this can be super hard, especially when you're looking at the idea of how to motivate a team. Because what is the number one thing you'll hear a leader say when you're like, I need you to teach somebody else how to do this? I need you to delegate. Tell me what you probably would expect to hear in that situation. It's just easier if I do it myself. It's just easier if I do it myself. I have heard that from incredibly intelligent people over and over again. It's just easier. Let me tell you what it's just easier actually means. And if your toes are out, you might want to tuck them in for a second on this one, because this might stomp a little. It's just easier means I'm okay with my own mistakes in delivering on this process. I'm not okay with somebody else's. Because I make mistakes when I'm doing what I'm doing. But I cover those up pretty quick. I can cover my own mistakes up pretty quickly. I also don't know why I do what I do. I just do it because that's the way it was. And that I don't want to have to get into understanding that why I do what I do and how I do what I do may not be the best way to do it. A lot of us started from very small, humble origins with what we do, and we decided how was just the easiest way for us to do it at the time to get it done. And it's been replicated over and over again. It's never been opened up to exposure and evaluation. It's just easier for me to do it means I can cover up my own mistakes, and I don't have to open up my process to evaluation. I don't have to really question what's going on. When you confront that and you're willing to overcome that in the how and move it to process, you've now externalized and created an evolving process that can be adjusted to meet changes. Maybe AI comes out and changes how you do artwork. Maybe a new process or system comes to light and you're like, yes, we need to plug that in because that's going to accelerate things. You can't adapt very well an individual in an evolving marketplace, but you can adapt a process infinitely. You know what you're doing, get it really clear, because if you're going to look to motivate your team, they need to know what. How, this takes a little bit more time. This is a journey, and it can feel a little bit like you're trying to tune up the engine while it's running. You get your fingers pinched sometimes when it gets inside of there, and you talk about the how. And while this seems like a weird place to put this question, sometimes why can be some of the hardest things to talk about. We are all in for-profit businesses. The number one reason we chose to be in a for-profit business was usually something associated with the amount of revenue we thought we could make doing this. And really good people who have great aspirations, who still formed a nonprofit business for the purposes of generating revenue, can sometimes have a very hard time talking about the fact that I want to have a profitable business. This can be a very, very hard conversation because people have weird feelings about money and the role it plays. So let's take a second here and talk about this, because this is a reason, not the reason often for many of us, but a reason. Profit is not a dirty word. Profit is where you find two things. Sustainability and growth. Inside of profit are locked up those two aspects of the future of your business and your team. Because absent profit, you don't have something that's going to last very long. You can only run at a deficit for so long before things start to kind of fall apart. And that happens for a lot of small businesses. The success rate of small businesses is less than 20% for 5 years. Is it because the people are horrible people and they don't know how to run their business? Maybe in some cases. But in most cases, they weren't able to obtain this to create sustainability. Because if your business is like a lot of other businesses, it's seasonal or it fluctuates or it goes like this. Profit is the thing that fills in the low points and helps you pack it in when it's in the good seasons. Additionally, if your growth goals are something that you can describe and you have aspirations to grow, it's better to grow out of this than to try and go into debt to grow. Now, there's good reasons you can go into debt to grow. And they can make logical reasons to do that. But profit is where that growth is paid for if you do go into debt to grow. This is not a dirty word. And if you don't have a healthy way of talking about this with your team, and you kind of hide the money conversation when you're talking about vision, what you do, how you do it, you're talking about the why, and there's this conversation of why, and there's this elephant in the room of the money part of what we do, but you can't talk about it in a healthy way, you're missing a component of understanding for your team. Because I guarantee you this, you don't pay people just because you like them. They are paid out of the revenue we generate as businesses. They have to understand their place in that. They have to understand their place in how this organization works. The funny thing is, nonprofits do a really lousy job of talking about this too. So if you're engaged in a community organization that's a nonprofit and you're raising money and you're participating with them in that as well, this can be even for a for-profit business, talking about cash flows and management and where things go and how much we need to raise and how everybody who's a part of this contributes to that creates healthy nonprofits as well. But it can get weird because people have hard times talking about this. It feels like if I say I want a 10% profit margin, then I'm just stuffing it all in my pockets. That's not what you're doing. You've got goals, you've got understanding. So what, how, and why. So there's the money part of why that needs to be something that is healthy to talk about. And you need to not be scared about that. But the other reason is your specific reason. Why is it that you chose to do this? Because you could choose not to. You could have chose to do something else. As scary as it could be, we could all walk out of here, close the doors, and go do something else. Now, the banks might come knocking on a couple of our doors, but we could choose to go do something else. Why did we choose this?
I think it gives you purpose or makes you feel valued.
I love that you said that, Mark. There's purpose, there's value in doing this thing. Inkscape creates that. And you doing it creates value and purpose. It could be, maybe you have a mission. Maybe you legitimately have a mission to help people through some of the hardest times. The law provides me an opportunity and my team an opportunity that even though we run a for-profit business, to help people through some of their most challenging times in their lives. To help them navigate, to empower them through that process. So maybe there's a mission with it as well. This why needs to be repeated consistently with your team. Is one of the first things that you can lose sight of. Even if you get to a place where you have great processes in how you deliver things, even if your what is super well defined, this is one of those things that if you stop talking about it, it can get lost. Because it's there all the time. But until you talk about why with your team consistently, and you remind yourself sometimes, why am I doing this? When it was hard to get out of bed, and I had to go have a difficult conversation with a team member, and I had to have a confrontation, and I had a client that wasn't happy. Why? Why did I do this? And sometimes that why changes. It grows. Because you started off with something and a vision for what your business was going to be, or your group was going to be, or organization was going to be. And then all of a sudden it created new opportunities that you had no idea about when you started. And all of a sudden you're like, I can be a part of this. This is a new why, or an evolved why. All of these feed into one of the biggest motivators for your team. Where? You talked about what you did. You're talking about how you do it. You're keeping why forefront and center. But where? If you do not have a clear vision for where you want to go, people will just spin. Even with a clear why, and a how, and a what, you're going to find your team just starts spinning where they are. It starts to feel like a treadmill and repetitious. It starts to feel like you're just grinding day in and day out. And guess what? If I'm grinding with this team over here, I could just as easily take my skills and resources and grind with this team over here that's going to pay me an extra $5 to do it. Your team starts to become not organization, vision minded. They start to become, this is the grind I'm in. Oh wait, there's more money over here, I can grind over here. And they'll just move to where the opportunity presents them without a clear where. And you can call this a mission. You can call this a strategic plan. You can set this in a number of different ways. But if you don't know where you're going, your team is not going to know where it's going. And then they'll start to erode a little bit of the whys because it'll get all messy because everybody's just grinding day after day after day. And you can be clear on the what even, you can have a great process. But without this, which is why I like these pictures so much, the idea of you guys fill a role, no matter where you are on your team, to help define where. Where are you headed? Do you have a map? Sure, some of the map may be a little fuzzy because a lot of entrepreneurs go, I believe there's something out there without actually having seen it. That's okay, because you're going to keep pushing in that direction and you'll keep filling out the map as you go along there. Your team will stick around for a compelling where you're heading with this business. Without a compelling where, you open yourself up to a community, especially like the one in here in Holmes County. We don't have enough workers. And there's a tremendous amount of competition for employees around here. Tremendous amount of competition. And employees and team members can go where the next best offer is for them unless they want to be a part of where you're going. So articulating where you're going is key to motivating. It starts real simple. Building designs is not the same as going out and building the building. So, you get real clear on what it is that you're doing. Title work is not the same as having to go doing domestic relations at court. What gets really clear? How gets really hard because it takes a lot of getting out of this person into that process. Why is intimately connected, but it has to be repeated consistently in a way that people can understand why you're doing this. Because guess what? As a leader, even if you're leading peer-to-peer, your why is contagious. It is contagious to why everybody else is doing it. And I have a team that's big enough now at the firm that somebody's why in an area over here that's been expressed, they'd have no idea that somebody else in a whole other office heard that why and is now going, I'm motivated by that why over here, even though they're not directly connected every single day. So your why is contagious, but you got to get real clear about where. And the best way to talk about where is, what's your plan? What's happening this year? What's happening in 3 years? And then loosely, what do you want to happen in 5 years? Can you articulate this? Can you talk about where? And this is Bruce Hampshire, which all of you know Bruce and Toward the Goal. This is one of the key leadership ideas that Bruce Hampshire gave me back during COVID, because this was getting really fuzzy because I wasn't entirely sure where. I wasn't sure how long we were going to be around during COVID, let alone where we were going. And he said, Chris, you have every right not to know. You have no right not to communicate that. So even if sometimes it gets like, I'm not sure, I've got to be able to talk about, this is where I think we're going. This is where I think it's going to happen. You've got to communicate this to your team. And you've got to communicate in such ways that you're not creating something so firm that if that doesn't work out, they're all disappointed. It's a moving target. Everything is a moving target along the way. But we've got to start talking about these things with our teams. We've got to start talking about that. This process creates engagement and motivation. Because here's the thing I found out in the last 14 years of leading a growing firm. What I started out with is not enough to have gotten us here. I did not know enough. I did not have enough skills. I did not have enough vision to say in 14 years, this is where the firm was going to be. But the people who've come along with me on the journey, who have joined this journey, when we've talked about what we are and how we do it and why we do it and where we're going, their skills and abilities have taken us as a firm beyond what I ever could have done on my own. That's why it's super important to work with motivation and understanding and engagement with your teams on this. Do you guys have any thoughts? I love being the talking head, as it were, at the front, but do you guys have any thoughts about any parts of this process, about motivation, about engagement? Whys?
I think your how of your process you'll never get that figured out. It'll always be, as soon as you get this figured out, somebody else will change that makes the whole process just start over again.
Have you ever thought about the problems you faced early on and how much you would give to have those same kind of problems to solve now? Because I remember in 2015, the firm hadn't grown to the point yet that we had multiple locations, that we had multiple needs. We had one phone line. The biggest argument of that year was getting more phone lines and how to do it. And that seemed like such a huge problem that we had to face. And do we do it this way? Do we do it how do we do all of this? And I would give anything to have that level of problem. And so you're exactly right. The process is probably better put like this. It's just gonna keep growing. And how you do what you do is super important to keep as an open system. There are, as we say sometimes, there's no sacred cows. There's nothing that can't be put on the altar and sacrificed and then remade and done into a new way of doing it. And I'll be honest with you, growth, getting to this growth area, who's it, Mike? He used to be with Ray and Associates. I can't remember his last name right at the moment, but he told us early on, he says, especially when you're looking at profit and when you're looking at growth and how growth impacts process, every time you double in size, revenue-wise, you're going to run into a place where you have to change. So often from 100 to 200, from 200 to 400, 500, from 500 to 1 million, from 1 million to 2 million. When you're looking at those, and I don't know what it is, but every single time that's been a reality for us as a firm, we've had massive systems changes. The how has had to been opened up and we've had to take it apart and put it back together and figure that how out. So yes, the process keeps evolving. Any other thoughts, guys? Motivation, team leadership. Brandy, you're fairly young and leading a team. What are your thoughts?
Oh, Chris, come on now. It's too early for this. No, I feel like a lot of my core values align with the firm, honestly, in my way of leading the team. And my biggest thing is communication, having that open line of communication. And I like how you said that, what did you say? You have every right not to know, but you have no right to not communicate it. I live by that with my team. Always keeping an open line of communication and respect. So.
It's really interesting because Brandy's in 1 year in here and leading a team. And so the questions will be in 5 years if she sticks with it. What does she want to be willing to trade in 5 years for the problems she's facing right now?
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, guys?
Profit is kind of interesting because it's like you said, it's always a bad word. You can't talk to employees about profit. You can't talk to, but even customers when you're negotiating. Then I'm like, you want me to sell it to you at this price? I can't sustain myself here, or do you want me to be able to charge this and stay in the business and conserve you 5 years from now?
That is,
And
yeah.
It always comes out as, in the end, I want you to be profitable.
I had somebody I was talking to a couple weeks ago. I wanted to engage their services. They've been doing this for less than 3 years, what they've been doing. And they're like, well, what do you normally pay for this? Was their answer. And I said, I wanted to help them on this journey. I said, what do you charge for doing this? Well, I don't want to price myself out of the opportunity and miss the opportunity. And I said, that's not what I'm asking you. I asked you, what do you charge for this? And if I can do that, I will say, let's do that. If I can't do that, I might come back and say, can we do this? Your job is to tell me what you're worth for doing this. That person came back to me a couple days after the conversation because he ended up giving me a quote. And I ended up having to go back and saying, that's a little high for what I need for this project. Can we do it at this? And we came to an agreement on it. But he came back to me a couple days after that conversation and he says, I've never felt like I could ask for what I was worth until you pushed me on that. I said, you should all the time. Doesn't mean you're going to get it, but you should all the time know where you are. Being able to talk about this and understanding this tool, because this is what money is, a tool, is an essential part of your success as a for-profit entity. And if you can't talk about this tool and the way that it helps your team succeed, the way that it helps your customers and clients succeed, the way that it helps. Today I'm getting together, ready to put together a proposal for a large developer that we might be working with. Part of what I need to do when I'm talking about that to them, because they asked for a proposal, is be confident in what we're asking for, but also look for ways that it makes sense for them and clarity. This is not scary. There's just a lot of head trash usually wrapped up in talking about money with people. Well, guys, I appreciate you guys being here this morning. Let me share this a little bit with you. This is something we've been wrestling with as a firm. I've actually realized a little bit in some of our conversations in the last 2 months that we've been spending a bunch of time here, and I need to get back to here a little bit when we start talking to our team a little bit at the firm. And that, like I said, this is one of those, it's easy to just, it gets shoved down and you don't talk about it enough. And so that's going to be part of my mission over the next couple months, to get back into the whys. We're clear about the wheres we want to be. And so this is one of those things that it's like you'll do really well here for a moment and then realize this is slipping, and then you might be like, oh, it's been a while since we talked about where we're going. But it's real simple. It's just a very simple process.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about the improving the how and how it can get stuck in one person, I guess improving that, what exactly would that look like? Replicating that person or creating external systems and procedures that are accessible to everyone?
Both and. Both and. So it's unique from the perspective of what the work, Brandy does coaching largely towards policies that are drug-free policies that companies have to stay in compliance with state work often, or Department of Transportation and federal work. So she's coaching a lot. And that sounds like a job that completely is locked up in Brandy. But there are processes like actually the advent of natural language generated AI, where if done right and over time, you can upload a lot of this information into that AI, ask it questions, and it's going to give answers that are 95% of what Brandy would have said anyway. So in that situation, yes, sometimes it's about more people knowing the process, but sometimes it's about innovation. And sometimes it's both. You know, disseminating, empowering your team to be able to act and make mistakes, because they will. And then also building in, how can we lean into innovation? How can we lean in process templates? How can we lean into trainings? Training is a massive thing that we probably overlook when we're doing about processes, because people fundamentally are going to approach a situation that your process doesn't talk into, and their training about how to adapt is going to be what's key to that. So that's a great question. Well, thanks guys. And again, with the GapCon coming up, we're looking for nominees for this. So please do take a few minutes if you can. Think about some companies you might want to nominate for this. It takes less than 5 minutes to go in and fill out the nomination form, but we do want to hear from you about why. So there's a little block that talks about why do you think this company should be nominated for this. And I don't think I have any other announcements by way of anything other than to say I'm glad Mark's here to say thanks, Mark, for all the work with the new parking lot extension. I think Mark was able to get us all 10 more spaces, I think in total. There's 8 here. We got 2 more by moving the handicap spot over here next to the door. So appreciate Mark doing that, because if you've seen over the past couple months, we've been tight. We've been real tight with space. And so, but appreciate Mark and Kingsway Services that came in and did that. So, all right guys, have a great day.